Okay, we are live with She Blazing Canna Chat. I'm so excited for this Canna Chat. I've been waiting all week for it.
All week. We've been talking about this all week.
We're like, oh my God, we have to definitely just create an amazing chat for our audience with you lovely ladies. I would love to introduce, me and Tiana are going to introduce one of you guys at the same or at different times, but I wanted to introduce Dia. Dia Sims is, you know, when they say behind every great man is an even greater woman, I'm a attest to that. So, I mean, Dia Simmons is the epitome of woman empowerment and just amazing, just awesome blackness. She is the brains behind Combs Enterprise, and I mean, I looked up to you for so. I mean, if anybody that's in marketing, entertainment, if you don't know Dia Sims and Ericka Pittman, then okay, whatever. You don't know what you're doing.
You don't know entertainment.
You don't know entertainment, and just growing up as a brown girl from East New York, Brooklyn, and just know that you can actually get to you guys' level, you ladies' level, and it's always driven me throughout my whole career. So thank you. Thank you. You don't even know you did it, but thank you. Tiana, please.
That's incredible. That's incredible for you to say. Thank you. I don't know if you know, Eric, the lovely and talented Ericka Pittman also hails from East New York. So it's a lot of beautiful.
Really?
I'm a brown girl from East New York. That's why I got so excited.
Just to piggyback off of what Dee said, as a woman coming from the entertainment space, venturing into cannabis, you couldn't have been in entertainment or wanting to break into entertainment and a lover of music, and music meets art meets culture, without knowing these two women and not knowing that they led a lot of the culture shifting initiatives, i.e. Ciroc, that we, that are a huge part of our culture today. Dee, I actually interviewed with you years ago, Combs Enterprise, because I was like, I know I spoke to Dee. There was a huge conversation between me and Dee. You were looking for an EA, and yes. I spoke with Marina over in HR, and I think I came to meet with you. I honestly don't remember it, but it was like in 2014. So
oh my gosh,
we've been singing your praises.
That's crazy.
We've been singing your praises. Okay, introducing the lovely Ericka Pittman. She is a marketing entertainment boss again. She is the CMO over at Viola. She was, I believe, CMO over at Aqua Hydrate for years, and she was the boss queen of everything at Combs Enterprises for years on years on years on years. And now she's an author. She just recently wrote a book, What My Mother Told Me. So cheers to adding more to your portfolio. And we are really excited to hop into this conversation right now. So thank you for having us, ladies. Thank you for being with us, ladies, to talk about social equity, and equality for Black women in cannabis. And like with everything else in every other industry, we have to forge our paths. Like we have to create our lanes and come in and amplify things. So we excited to have you.
And before we jump in, I just wanted to say how you ladies actually made a mark in the cannabis industry already, and it's in a short time. I remember when I decided to get into cannabis, and it was like a decision I made, and I was just like, I'm going to put my all into it. I'm going to learn. I'm going to breathe everything cannabis. And then I found out about the BRN Group. I'm like, you see? I told you, and I'm like telling my husband, I'm like, I told you, like, it's happening. Like, people that look like me is doing it. And then, and then that led me to great opportunities. And then Ericka's press release came out about Viola. I'm like, it's happening. So tell me about your transition and how easy or difficult it was from being with Combs Enterprise and then going to doing the BRN Group. And how did that look like? What did that look like? How did you create that for yourself?
Absolutely. I think first I just want to say thank you for having us. I have known and been friends with Ericka since I was 8, and as she reminds me, she was 7 years old. So we are super fans of seeing other Black women doing amazing things. We have lifted each other up every step of the way, literally from playgrounds to $1 million deals. So we love a chance to do these together. So thank you for having us both. And I think just like the unity that you both have shown, it never hurts. I can't say it often enough. As Black women, as we're being, subjected to both racism and sexism in this country, the only way out is through, and we will be stronger. We hold hands and push our way, really block by block, with audacity, with this type of collaboration. So thank you for having us. This platform is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
In terms of the transition, I worked at Combs Enterprises for 14 years, started off as executive assistant, and was privileged to grow to become the first president of Combs Enterprises in 2017. But I will tell you, very shortly after I was so privileged to have that announcement, I was really, sniffing around the cannabis industry, because when I think about all the things I learned about spirits, and when I first met all these multi-billion-dollar distributors, legitimately, this is not like hyperbolic, no puffery to say this, many of them are the grandchildren of bootleggers, right? So that their families, when prohibition was lifted, said, we're staying in the business and we're getting into the business of spirits distribution, and their grandchildren and their grandchildren's grandchildren will benefit from that decision. So when I saw this change happening, coming from a regulatory standpoint in cannabis, I'm like, oh shit, I can't in good conscience stand on the sidelines. One, there's such a dearth in what is required from a social justice standpoint in this industry. When I won't go into that because that's a whole 1 hour speech. But we talk about like the need to address the challenges, and that people are right this second in prison what somebody's doing in the next state, making hundreds of millions of dollars around. It is a challenge. And to me, the best way to change something is to become a part of it. So for me, there was no way I was going to watch this opportunity industry that can literally change the globe economically. And more importantly, I want to ensure that people of color and women are represented. And here was a chance to be in an industry from almost the beginning.
Wow. That's amazing aspect to have, a point to have, because even when we started this platform, or even getting into cannabis, I feel like, we are like almost oblivious to the facts. We really don't know, what exactly is going on until you indulge yourself into it. And as we started to talk to like-minded people like you, we started to realize, whoa, hold on, our people are in jail. It started like just peeling back the layers. It just started opening up a whole new world for us. And I'm like, wow, how could we as Black people, as Black women, have a voice in cannabis, but we don't spread that message. We don't attack that. And so any initiative that you guys are a part of, please share with us. We would definitely share it and definitely move forward with that. Now, Ericka, how did you get into with Viola Cannabis? Tell me your story, please.
So similar to Dia, I've been watching cannabis for the last 11 years, maybe 12 years, honestly. I've always been intrigued by the category, just knowing before I even knew anything about the spirits industry, just understanding the dynamic of what cannabis really is, like at its core, the efficacy of cannabis. I think even when the medicinal use of cannabis to fight the side effects of chemotherapy became legal, right? And so if you were a cancer patient in the 90s, I believe it was, you could be prescribed cannabis. And that was sort of what sparked it for me. That was like, wait a minute. So this is a little bit legal? Is it legal or is it not legal? It helps us, but it doesn't help us. I was like, what's going on here? And it made me start to kind of try to understand what the plant really did from a medicinal standpoint. But much like a lot of other African American people in this country, you know, cannabis is a taboo because we've been disproportionately penalized behind the effects of, you know, using and trading cannabis. So I've always sort of shied away from it, but it evolved, and I've always had this curiosity. And I think even 10 years ago, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. But am I moving to Colorado? Was not willing to move to Colorado to get it done, right? So I've always sort of had my eye on the industry. And I think in recent years, it became more of a economic strategy. And Dia mentioned it, just thinking about, you know, the big waves in economy, right? In the 90s, the World Wide Web was the thing that was the industrial revolution of our time, right? It changed economy, it changed lifestyles. And over the course of the history of this country, there have been these big waves of economic booms. And for me, it was like, it has to be cannabis. First, I thought it was going to be natural energy, but it just didn't pop the way it needed to. And I think it will be at some point. And I was like, this is it. Cannabis is going to go legal. So yeah, so long story short, you know, been thinking about it, and my career, believe it or not, has been very serendipitous. I got a call, and they wanted to just have a conversation, and I didn't even know who Al Harrington was, to be honest with you. I didn't know much about Viola, and I just sat down and I talked to these guys, and when I realized not so much the level of the levity and the value of what they were contributing to the industry, but what they were doing for people and the purpose-driven work that Al was committed to, I was sold, and I just really wanted to be a part of changing this industry for our people.
To piggyback off of that, and speaking to Viola and speaking to Al and the purpose-driven work. First of all, the story behind the starting of Viola, if anyone doesn't know, Al's former NBA player, his grandmother was sick, and he kept saying, "Grandma, I'm trying to."
Named after his grandmother, by the way. Viola is his grandmother. Viola is his grandmother, right? Yes.
Viola's grandmother. Yes. And he's like, "Grandma, try this." You know, I believe she had glaucoma. She couldn't see. Yes. Grandma, try this. She's like, "I ain't trying no reefer." Sound like my nana. She tried it. He walked in the room one day. She was able to read her Bible, and he said tears just automatically came to his eyes. And when you hear these stories, you realize, okay, I have to be a part of telling that narrative and dropping the stigma. This is a healing plant. And most importantly, this is a healing plant that has had the effects of in the Black community have been derogatory. You know what I mean? They have derailed a lot of lives. So what is, you know, Viola's purpose driven? What are some social equity programs or initiatives you guys, you lady, you kings and queens are working on to not only change that narrative, but enforce change?
Yeah, I'm so excited. You know, one of the things in terms of like me sort of coming up with the positioning strategy for Viola is, you know, our 3 pillars are plant, purpose, and people, right? So we're plant forward. Plant is what unites everyone. So just the level of, you know, heritage we have in the industry. We're a legacy brand. We've been around for 9 years. And in this category, it's a very long time, right? So going, you know, messaging forward with the quality of the plant and the legacy we have around our harvesting process and the premium nature of what we produce. But the purpose part is what we're rooted in, right? And so I really wanted to kind of deep dive how we segmented that out. And I launched a sub-segment of the company called Viola Cares. And for us, our focus is education. And not just education from a standpoint of how to get into the industry, but education on the efficacy of the plant, and also education on what our rights and opportunities are from a legislation standpoint criminally, right? So what we can and can't do, where we can and can't carry, how we engage, and all these different things. So education, entrepreneurship, right? Getting people involved, getting them, you know, the ability to make their own money, creating social equity around the category. So it's education, entrepreneurship, expungement, which Dia touched on, and I believe Dee touched on, right? And so there's this crop of people that are making billions of dollars off of this industry. And there's some states, while it is recreationally legal, people still have felony records. They can't even get expunged, let alone get out of jail. Let's say they're out, they are felons, they can't get a new job. Yet still people are making, it's just not right? So expungement is a huge, huge part of our efforts. And then incubation. And so how are we literally putting our muscle and our capital behind people to help them to grow successfully, because cannabis is a capital heavy investment. And so while people want to get in, you need a lot of money to be able to do it. And then once you do it, you have to know how to run a business, effectively. So incubation is a big part of that. And then the last piece is people, and that's the sexy lifestyle part, and just connecting with people and, doing things and showing up in places that make sense for our consumer.
And to piggyback about, I'm sorry, let me just interject really quick. Sorry, just to piggyback about what you just said. A lot of states, well, actually California, they just passed a law that they're expunging the records of of people who had cannabis or marijuana crimes or whatever they might call it. But you know that you have to go and so just to let you know, I'm talking about my audience here, just to let you guys know that you have to go and you have to get your lawyer or get whoever to kind of go there to expunge your record. I don't think they're going to be coming after you to expunge your record. So you make sure that you have that, make sure you get on that.
And to that end, Dee, that's a great build. We partnered, our first charitable partnership is with a company called Root and Rebound.
What's the name of it?
It's called Root and Rebound. You can just Google Root and Rebound. I believe it's rootandrebound.com. And they're an amazing not-for-profit organization where they offer legal clinic services. They offer reentering citizen manuals on sort of how to register to vote, how to get a job, how to get expunged. And they also offer up legal time to file paperwork for some of the specific processes around expungement. So go to Root and Rebound.
Oh, wow.
And they'll be there to help. It's a great organization. And so we've done a lot of work with them. We do a lot of charitable donation partnerships with them to continue to drive awareness for that effort.
And for those who want to get the link to Root and Rebound, I put it in our chat in Facebook, so you get to go there. Yeah, sorry.
Also,
my question, I want to stay on this topic though, so I'll ask my question later. I want to stay here about social equity.
I just have a quick just for a follow on. I believe it's Winston Strawn, which is the big kind of top white shoe law firm, is also out of North Carolina, has been also offering pro bono services. So if anybody reaches out to you, pass them to me and we can help connect them so you can have the lawyers to help with the expungements.
Perfect. Okay, I'll put that in here. Thank you.
Sorry, Tiana, what are you gonna say?
My question, I was going to ask Ericka when she was speaking on the industry and cultural leaders. Do you feel as though, because there's been such a large amount of industry leaders within the culture, music, arts, entertainment that are either transitioning into the cannabis space or leveraging their experience in their respective careers to the cannabis space? Do you feel as though there is a leg up there? Do you feel as though there is a bunch of synergies? Why? What's that shift about? I know for me and Dee, that shift was a genuine interest in cannabis, in the healing plant. And to be honest, that we both knew was that's the next gold rush. Like you said, next gold rush.
Green rush, yeah.
The green rush.
The green rush.
I mean, I think Dia can speak to this as well. Have you guys ever heard of the book, Who Moved My Cheese?
No, but now I'm going to listen to it.
It's probably about 90 pages. Every employee that has ever worked for me, I make them read Who Moved My Cheese. It's an amazing little book. It's a fairy tale about two mice and their journey to kind of find success, so to speak. And it's this little sort of parable story. But it's a great learning tool because it just helps you to understand, shifts in your environment and shifts in your culture and being aware of where things are moving and how to maintain success and pivot when it's time to pivot, right? That's basically the crux of the story, is you create success by pivoting quickly and making sound decisions. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of people in the entertainment industry in general, from a media standpoint, music, all of the different elements, the industry's changing radically, and it has been changing for the last 20 years. And, cannabis sort of is a little bit intrinsic to music, if you will. It's like almost like a cousin. So it comes with the creative process a lot of times. So I think people are starting to think about new ways to reinvent themselves and recreate opportunity. And at this point, I mean, a blind man can see that, cannabis is the next opportunity. So I think it's more of just a capitalist thing, but I don't know, do you think there's something else happening there from an interest and connection standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, I think the comment about gold rush is a big one. It's important for, I think, all of us it's a comparison that we all make casually, but when you look back at the history of the actual gold rush and what it did and how it actually changed this country is pretty incremental, and think that you're living in those times and why you should participate, right? So when everybody rushed to California for gold, California was not even an official state yet and had actually a pretty small population. As a result of the gold rush, you start to have this massive increase at pace within like 5 years of all these new inhabitants, and it exploded. The population more than doubled in under 5 years. The thing that's interesting about it, and something to bear in mind when you're thinking about getting into the cannabis industry, is the people who made significant money in the long run were not the handful of people who actually struck gold. It was Levi's who made the dungarees for everybody to wear, or the banks that came up and supported the industry for the people that populated there. Wells Fargo, right? Exactly. It was the supporting industry and the ancillary opportunities to support the effort, which is where you saw the long-term effects. And when you look at what happened for the state of California, which at that time was not even a state when the gold rush started, today, California typically comes in as number 5 in the world. If California was a country, it would be 5th from an economy standpoint. When you think about the green rush that we're in right now, that's the same level of expectation we should have, and we should participate in as women and people of color, which you should do for the United States and potentially the world. In terms of the synergy with entertainment, look, there are literally thousands and thousands of years of clinical experience that show how cannabis acts like a muse in the creative process. So I don't think it's a coincidence that you have artists who have been either inspired by or inspired from the process of indulging in cannabis, let alone all the medicinal healing as well. I mean, you have people who are, no matter what your genre, wherever you work, 100 million Americans, which is almost 1/3, 33%, which is almost 1 out of 3 people, suffer from some type of chronic pain, right? Artists are not exempt from that, right? A lot of artists live their lives, go hard like athletes, right? So that actually gives you, that actually affects your body. So besides the inspiration, a lot of these guys have firsthand experience the healing effects, to your point, of this natural plant that is hundreds of thousands of years old. And these guys get approached with a lot of brand opportunities that don't feel natural. I think all of us probably have worked with a lot of talent. We've been fortunate to work with great talent in the world. And it is frustrating for them sometimes to think through, like, I don't want to compromise my art to push out this commercial about, whack pencils that I have no interest in. I really care about, but this is something they care about, they know about, they can speak intelligently about. And moreover, it is really our due to participate in it. So when these gentlemen and women who are thinking about, what is the next 50 years of my life? Ericka and I both would often joke with kind of like some of the younger artists and say, like, you are in danger of living for another 70 years. What's your master plan? Cannabis is a natural transition to be like, okay, this is something I believe in passionately. I believe in as an artist, but also I can see my economic upside here, and I can have a long-term business proposition in this space. I think that is why we're seeing the green rush affect artists disproportionately than your average person.
And what do you say to
that? Wait, before you ask the next question, Dee, because I think that this is important. Dia mentioned something that's really powerful for all of your viewers. The idea that the gold rush, it wasn't the folks that discovered the gold that had the longest run. It was these ancillary businesses that burgeoned out of the gold rush, like the Levi's of the world and the Wells Fargos of the world. And what I've been evangelizing in the marketplace, because everybody wants their dispensary license or their cultivation license, right? And the reality is, from a legislation standpoint, they're only allocating specific amounts of those at this time, right? And so the key for us to start thinking about, what are these ancillary businesses that are going to burgeon as a result of the success of cannabis. I remember in 2009, the real estate market in Colorado was like, I think it was like 400%. It went 4x immediately, right? And so if you had an $800 a month apartment, it was now $1,600 a month, $2,000 a month. So, just thinking about the ancillary opportunities around cannabis is really important to create success as well.
I agree. And I wanted to piggyback off of what Dia said about entertainment and cannabis. How do you feel about, there's a lot of cannabis brands out there. And when I first got into cannabis, a lot of the brands wanted to use my connections with celebrities or, in the entertainment business to grow their brand, because of course we can't advertise. So the best way to do that is through influencer marketing. But these brands don't really stand for the things that we stand for in our community, like Black Lives Matter. They just really want to exploit our culture. How do you feel at the BRN Group? Do you look for brands that's actually conscious of our culture, or Is it something that, is it a brand that you feel that you turn down customers or clients based on that?
We do. And so two things. The truth of the matter is there actually aren't a lot of cannabis brands. There are a lot of cannabis products.
Okay.
Very few, and that's an opportunity when you think about, everybody's not a grower, everyone's not gonna have a dispensary license. But those of you who understand how to build brands and connect with consumers, it is a dearth right now in terms of people who understand how to take a cool, maybe even a highly effective product and make it a sustainable brand. That said, at the BRN Group, what's going on over there? You got mosquitoes? What's that?
No, I'm trying to get my car in.
Oh, in church?
I thought you were doing that comment. I thought it was like, yes.
That said, there's a couple of things. So at the BRN Group, the things we are branding, distribution, and e-commerce, right? In terms of distribution, when I'm working with some of these historical national distributors that I mentioned earlier in the spirit space that have a lot to lose when they go out to the Safeways and the Targets of the world, you have a couple of issues at play. You have companies that don't understand how to advocate rightly for the things that are important to us and the things that are important to our customers. I'm fortunate to be able to say, we don't want to work with you. This is not an option. And we can be audacious, and this is like my favorite buzzword, please let's repeat it and say as much as possible, because one of the biggest things I'm encouraged for us to do beyond the cannabis industry is to stand in our collective power, our $1 trillion buying power, our enormous influence over culture and brand spends, and say like, hey, if this audience is not being treated with the commensurate level of investment and interest and respectful and requited engagement, it is not a fit. A short example is we vetted about 237 companies at my last count to look at companies specifically in CBD, who we would work with for distribution. Only 9 of them, as of yesterday, after 12 months of looking at companies, actually would hit the criteria for being a brand, for being conscionable in the way they engage consumers, for having sophisticated business operators. So there again, there's a lot of scuttlebutt happening, but if you come to play, you can distinguish yourself very easily.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Just back too off of your point earlier, Dia, where you mentioned prohibition and how a lot of these families who are a lot of people who started, distributing spirits were a part of the prohibition era, were bootleggers. Yes. This is the opportunity for us to create generational wealth. Whether it be, like you said, by cannabis, however, product, brand, farm, whatever the case may be, because for me, again, like Dee said, we came in and we're just learning. For me, it was like, honestly, I love weed. It's helped with anxiety, pain, depression, all of that good stuff. It's the healing power of the plant. And originally, my interest in cannabis was because, again, it's the next gold rush. But being in this space now and learning, how our people are affected, the numbers are staggering. First of all, in the United States, every 48 seconds, and according to a 2018 report, 48 seconds, someone gets arrested for a petty marijuana charge. Yeah. Black people are 3.6 times likely to get arrested over our counterparts.
And 82% of all arrests in the African and Latino communities are cannabis arrests.
Okay.
And now we have big corporate that they're about to go. A lot of places are going from becoming millionaires
to arrests, sorry.
Billionaires, I'm sorry. Billionaires.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, it's okay, because it's frustrating. I actually get very frustrated.
Yeah.
How do we use our power and use our influence outside of creating, social equity programs and raising a voice and creating entrepreneurs and different careers? What about these people who are already affected, or people who already have felons, or people who, think about all of the NBA players who were heavily affected, their careers, their reputation, they lost money. In addition to, expungement, what do you guys think about reparation? I know that sounds crazy because we didn't reparation.
No, exactly.
But how can we rectify that? What are we going to do?
So I'll jump in and kick it to Ericka. I think so there's a lot there, right? So first is cannabis is a subset of a larger issue that we're all fighting right now. And I'm inspired by the revolution that we're in, right? And that is the first step. That America, a lot of people don't think about this, but America is a relatively young country. Most other countries around the world are on their fourth or fifth revolution. If this goes right, this will be our second. But on the other side of it, we need to have real wins, right? Yeah. So you think about, there's certain things we're thinking about, like, I think certain things, that we're not talking about enough in terms of we are being disproportionately arrested, but we are taxpayers. So we are paying for our own disproportionate persecution for petty crimes that don't make any sense. This country, and not to go off the rails here, but this country has a problem. I think cannabis represents this as a symptom of this, of overinvesting in defense instead of diplomacy, and police instead of community, right? It's a Band-Aid approach that we, the four of us and everybody listening, are paying for. It's not some secret corporate profit that's paying for us for petty possession crimes, for people's lives to be ruined for decades. There's a case I was looking at the other day, a gentleman named Lloyd who was arrested when he was 19 years old for possession. Life was ruined for 30-something years. It's ludicrous. It's a waste of time. And if you don't care about it from your heart, it's a waste of our money. What could those taxpayers dollars be doing? What could those police be doing? Go solve real crimes at the time. You know what I mean? That's not a crime. So I think in the midst of our revolution, we have to turn upside down the level of legislation. I didn't talk about this earlier, but one of the things that I worked on from the BRN Group, and I live in Maryland in this corridor, is a lot of behind the scenes legislation change. Like, what can we do from a regulatory standpoint? Work like what is being done over at Reform with, with Lauren. I'm about to call Meek Mill Memphis, please. How you know I'm 44? That Meek is doing with Robert Kraft and Jay-Z and all those guys. That kind of thing makes a difference, but they're on the opposite side. They're trying to help you, to your point, get out and get expunged. The problem has to start in the beginning. To my earlier point of the cycle, even with families, we overinvest in college instead of prenatal. We have to fix the system at the prenatal stage, right? Like, what is happening when laws are being created? What laws need to be taken off the system? In terms of, let's talk about drugs generally and how the war on drugs disproportionately affected this country, and then how many countries copycatted what America did to its, to the detriment of all of us. I used to be a pharmaceutical rep in my 20s. And had a chance to study many legal drugs, right? And antibiotics, antipsychotics. And it came to me even then that it's super arbitrary which drugs are legal and which drugs are not. So when you talk about a plant like cannabis, which if you just ask an alien to come look at our world for 100,000 years, they'd be like, well, if I looked at cigarettes as an example versus cannabis, or any of the opioids that are legal right now versus cannabis seems like it should be the easiest one to go out. Do you know they say that it would take a person smoking 40,000 joints in 15 minutes to overdose? Like that's super simple. You don't get safer than that, right? So I think like there's an issue with the classification, and everybody is interested in safe drug regulations for all drugs, right? But the truth is that the current systems are set up in ways that are driven by racism instead of by science. I think that's kind of our biggest issue that has to be overcome. And then, I'm sorry, Ericka.
No. I mean, I think to that point, the first thing I was going to say is like, this is a legislation issue, right? This is about us getting in at the lobbying level and really starting to have different conversations around the penal code, the system, and just how we're regulating the use of cannabis. It's so interesting. Have you guys ever watched Boardwalk Empire?
Yeah,
it's a great show.
Sad that it was gone.
Great show about prohibition. And what's funny is I had never watched it. And then once I got into cannabis, the first thing that I recognized was the analogous nature of spirits to cannabis. It's uncanny. It's literally the beginning of prohibition 88 years later, right? So there's two things that's happening here. And I say this to people all the time. Prohibition was 88 years ago. Like, that's not even a lifetime.
Right around the corner, yeah.
Not even a lifetime ago, right? And when you think about, sort of these interstate laws and why spirits is so complex now, is because as they were starting to legalize liquor, certain states took it on faster than others, right? And then just I think the criminalization around spirits was a unique dynamic during Prohibition, and the reform that came shortly after that is the part that I'm starting to really deep dive into, because we've got to figure out, it's all, the legislation sounds good, but what are we asking for? Like, what is the long lead benefit? Is it reparations? Is it expungement? I don't necessarily know what it is, but we're starting to think long and hard about what we're tasking our lawmakers with to rectify and protect our people specifically moving forward. You know, Al and our co-founder Dan Pettigrew and I had an amazing series of meetings in Albany around the legislation. And when we were sitting down, you know, with the governor's team, you know, they were asking us, what should we do? How do we fix this at the prenatal level, right? How are we creating community support to educate, you know, our law enforcers and our citizens of our communities about cannabis and how it works? I don't have an answer, to be honest with you, but I think it definitely is thought-provoking around what we need to do and say and advocate for as we move forward. Yeah.
The capital is a big piece of it. I mean, one of the biggest disconnects is, doesn't matter. You could be the most brilliant person in the world. There's no zip code that has a lock on genius, but the lack of access to capital for minorities is staggering. It is staggering. And just even as, you know, the systemic issues are deep. And honestly, we need a whole like 3-month summit with us four and everybody else listening. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like legit, because it's deep, and it is has terrible intentions, but it has been really well executed.
And well designed.
So we have to be equally as strategic in the way we wind it back and eradicate the things that are standing in our way.
And that's a great segue to my next question that one of our viewers had. Can you explain social equity and what exactly are you how exactly is social equity helping minorities get into the cannabis industry?
Absolutely. So it took a while for me to sort of digest social equity, right? Because I'm like, how is social equity not social impact? I don't really get it. And, you know, when people talk about social equity, they're really talking about sort of equalizing the playing field around the economic opportunities in cannabis, first and foremost. But to that end, it's also creating a space of balance and equal footing for people of color across the board. So social equity primarily has been focused on people that have been previously affected by cannabis crimes. I think that was the initial sort of big conversation. All of these big businesses are getting in and making tons of money. How are we, you know, looking back and making sure we bring some of the people that have previously been compromised? I think since then, the conversation has expanded a little bit broader to include just a more balancing act of people of color. 82% of cannabis industry owners are Caucasian, and less than 5% are African American, right? And then there's a whole other people of color dynamic that's even smaller. And so it's like, how are we, you know, creating a space to afford the opportunity for people that are not white, not necessarily been, you know, convicted of a crime, but are just not white, to get into the space to start to make money off of the industry. And that's really what social equity means. It's like creating equitable opportunities for people that have disproportionately been disadvantaged around cannabis.
And how is it, and how can someone take advantage of that?
Creating a space. Oh, I thought I heard somebody saying something.
Yes.
I think it's really educating ourselves, right, and understanding what opportunities are available. So in different states, there are social equity license allocations. So there's a requirement, sort of like, and I hate to diminish it in this way, but when you think about large personal living space developments, and there'll be a small percentage that goes to subsidy housing. There'll be like, you know, 10% of the apartments in a multi-dwelling unit will go towards subsidy apartments for people that may not necessarily be able to afford getting into, you know, the main pool of candidates. It's the same kind of thing. So out of all of the licenses that states allocate for cannabis, whether it's cultivation, dispensaries, distribution, or processing, which are the 4 steps of the cannabis cycle, there's a small percentage that they account for disadvantaged individuals. And each state defines that disadvantage differently. So if you want to get a dispensary license as a social equity candidate, you have to meet certain requirements of what that hardship, quote unquote, might be. So you really need to understand what state you want to get into, where you actually live, and then understanding the availability. But then you also have to have this legal support to be able to submit the right process, the right paperwork, and the right details to be able to get approved. And that's where we talked about capital constraint, because like it's really interesting. It's really interesting how this country is designed. And I used to think it was, for years, I thought it was just capitalism that was the spirit of why things are so complex. And now, as I've sort of awakened, if you will, I'm woke now, right? In the last 10 years, right? I'm realizing this is by design to continue to create this disparity between the haves and the have-nots. I don't know if it's black and white, I don't know what it is, but it really is to continue to keep this gap between the 1%, the 5%, and then the rest of the world, right? The rest of the country, excuse me. So in California, for instance, the social equity program, you have to either have been convicted of a cannabis-related crime, or you have to be a family member of someone convicted of a cannabis-related crime, right? Those are the two requisites for the social equity dispensary licenses. But then you have to have real estate. You have to have the real estate in your possession in order to qualify for the license. So I have to get a retail space, pay the rent on the retail space to submit my application.
Just to submit your application. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And then I have to wait for the permitting. So I'm continuously paying rent on a space that I cannot capitalize on because I don't know if I have the license.
It's ridiculous. My friend has a dispensary and she said she had to pay rent for like 8 months before she even opened.
There you go. Before she even opened.
How does that even make sense? And how can people afford that if you don't have like investors or saved your whole life savings? And some people, not even their life savings. That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And a lot of the bigger companies are buying people out of their licenses. Get it? So now it's like, oh, we've got this 10%, the social equity, but I can't afford my social equity license. Oh, you're going to give me 50 grand for my social equity license? Fantastic. Here you go.
Wow. I have questions coming in. So these questions are juicy too. For Dia, how are you creating pathways for other women of color to enter the space as professionals and consumers in cannabis?
So honestly, the main thing is really person by person. And my biggest thing is like putting people into the industry or any industry. So I mean, Ericka knows me for years. I'm anytime I hear any opportunity, any hole, I'm unabashedly advocating for the fact that you need more minorities. Selfishly, I am all the time, especially saying you need more women and you need more Black people, which is no coincidence. So before, it's been easier even to do now, but one of the great things, and just give shout out to Puff Daddy Brother Love on this one, is anybody coming out of the school of Puff Daddies, like we were sharpened. It already existed, most of us, but we were definitely sharpened to walk with audacity into a place and say, like, this is a nice product you have here, but I don't pass by a Black person yet. So what we're going to bring to the table is extraordinary. And before we do it, we don't want to get paid full price. We want a premium because we're so damn amazing. And you have to come with this level of investment. And also being clear about, like, don't, when you think about, we got to pay with our power. We got to pay with our wallets. If you are if you're a customer of cannabis and you walk into a dispensary, ask the question, hey, excuse me, do you know if this brand does anything in social justice? Do you know, like, Google them. Does anybody Black right there? Make the point of, like, I was about to buy your product, but I'm not buying it because I just noticed that your whole board is all white. And I know, and also be available to help. Like, I think the other problem we have on our side is, it's not offensive to me if a white CEO who I know who runs a business with 40,000 employees says, like, oh, I can't find anybody Black. Yeah, maybe I could work harder, but I'm cool. I got a solution for you. I know 1,000, but it's not a unicorn. I know so many talented, amazing, like, let's take the excuses away and let us help lift each other up. Ericka talks quite a bit about the world being abundant, but the way I genuinely, it is, I'm not in charge of like a major not-for-profit, but I person by person try to match make and say, like, I'm looking at your organization. Thank you that you're interested in me. I'm not available, but here's 10 other alternate badass Black women. We are in overabundance. There's so many. That's my mission.
I love that. I think we all as Black women need to
Before we
take that
jump into
stance.
the next question, guys, Inclusive put together a really, really dope list. It's called Inclusive Base, and it's a long list of Black people in cannabis, from dispensaries to brands to services. It's a really,
Say it was called. Say it again.
It's Inclusive Base. They did a really, really amazing job. I've been using it as a resource for the last few weeks just to research cannabis companies and cannabis brands from people of color. Also, we'll drop it in the link, but guys,
they do awesome work, guys. Inclusive. Actually, let me give you a couple other ones. Look at MJ, not for this type of thing, but just learning in the industry in general. Look at MJ Biz, look at Benzinga, look at Cannabis Business Times, just to know what's going on. Cannabis Business Times is one of the best. They have a cohesive list of, if you are interested in dispensary or cultivation, state by state, what registration fees are or processes are, is pretty well done. I think Inclusive does a phenomenal job though in bridging people together. Definitely, I would say stay on top of them. The BRN Group, we put out something every week, so if you follow, it's just the BRN with no U, BRN Group on Instagram, in terms of having ongoing information there as well. And in the state of Maryland, if anybody happens to be in Maryland, Uplift does a lot of great work similar to what Inclusive does specifically in this state.
Nice. I put those links.
Thank you.
Actually, copy and paste, and I'm putting these links into the chat for anyone that's interested in Googling these companies. You guys can just check it out.
One last one that's good too. Vangst, VANGST, is a cannabis recruiter. So if you're interested in working in the space and learning about it, maybe before jumping, you might be able to have ownership or equity, but they are looking for people who have an understanding. The point that doesn't get made enough too about those people who are in jail or just coming out of jail for cannabis crimes is those people have industry knowledge. Like the reality is, I'm joining cannabis industry. I never smoked weed in my life, right? I have to ask a bunch of questions. Look at this cutie, hi. And then I have to ask questions. I had to learn. I had to be tutored to understand this strain versus that strain and what's Northern Lights versus OG Kush. I didn't know any of that. Whereas there's people who have an abundance of knowledge and they cannot join the industry because they have a stupid possession, crime. And that doesn't make any sense. And it's bad for business. It's just bad for business, actually.
And I'll tell you something else to that end. A lot of these big brands are not as successful as perhaps they would like to be, is because the ethos of selling weed is missing, right? So it's like you are this big multi-billion-dollar company that's trying to launch Oreo cookies, and you're forgetting about the core base of the infrastructure of this business and how it's sold and how it's commoditized. It's very, very different than what you're selling. And they're applying these big business tactics to very simple solutions to being successful. And they're missing because the culture of cannabis is missing because the people are felons and they can't get jobs. It's a big stupid circle.
Well, that Ericka makes an excellent, and this is a lot, we talked about the BRN Group with this. There's two things, not cannabis, but the illegal drug business is thought to be about between $300 and $350 billion global business, right? So it's a thriving business, it's existing commodities, the demand is there, so the supply is met. What's missing right now is if you have a great, whoever is giving you or dealing you your weed understands a level of personalization, you have a person-to-person interaction. If you want, you have a level of privacy, you have an opportunity to have a trusted guide to give you opportunity for exploration and inspiration and innovation. Trying to package up and sell weed the same way you're selling, to your point, the latest lotion, you're right, is a reason why the cannabis industry has had this terrible year the last year. And the most important thing I think you just said, which you just said, is the culture is missing, right? So, I think we represent how deeply, and Ericka and I have worked and so many different brands understand that you can't trick the culture. It's not a thing. And that's where our opportunity and our unfair advantages, I think, in the cannabis space is understanding how to respectfully engage, greet, meet, stand side by side and engage the culture as part of building this. That's a gap that has to be crossed. And frankly, you guys, I'm 44, I'm on the other way, but y'all have the coolness. Y'all know the relevant.
You're the GOAT. You're the blueprint though.
I'll leave a map.
I got one. I know you ladies got to get back to building your empires, but I got one more question for Ericka, and she says, "How is equity built into your company culture, and how are you creating pathways for employees to advance in their careers?"
How is equity built into the culture of the company? Does that mean employee ownership, or
Yeah,
I understand?
I think she was touching on the entrepreneur comment that you said.
Yeah.
That you said earlier.
Well, I think there are a couple things that are in place. Viola is a startup company, right? We're a late stage startup at this point, but we are. So there's not a sort of employee pool equity program implemented as of yet, like an official one. So, coming on board to Hy-Vee, which is a Midwest supermarket chain, it's actually all employee owned, the way their structure set up, right? You get hired, you get a piece of equity in the company. So we don't have that format, but what we do have is a very organic, family-friendly, build wealth mentality. So Al is the type of CEO that if you have a good idea, he's willing to invest in it, right? Like, he's very big on making Black people wealthy. And it's so funny because he said in an interview and on a panel, he wants to make 100 Black people millionaires. And everybody is like, it's the lottery. I can't feel the calls that I'm getting. Can Al Harrington make me a millionaire? Al Harrington said he's giving out $1 million. Hey, that's not what he said. He's going to help you become a millionaire. So you're going to have to do the work, and then you will become a millionaire because you did the work. He's not writing $1 million checks, right? And so I think that's the space that we've created at Viola, where, if there's an opportunity to grow, to build, to enhance Viola specifically, we figure out a way to incorporate that, if that makes sense.
And one last question for both you ladies, and that come from me. Hi. What advice do you give to a young brown Black girl that's coming out of college that's interested in getting into cannabis? What steps would she take to actually get into the industry, and just basically what steps would she take?
Yeah, you want to elaborate, because you talked about Vaxxed, I think the recruitment company.
One easy thing to do is check out Vaxxed. The other thing is to think about almost everything that exists outside of cannabis exists inside of cannabis. So you don't have to think like, yes, you should research and know your field, but if you're good at, accounting or macrame or hardware or engineering or marketing, there's something to do. You can come in and be like, I'm going to make the coolest bags that no one has to carry their pens in, or I'm going to be the person who helps with the software that does a better job of tracking the supply from seed to store. I'm super engaging, and I want to be the person that helps to infiltrate influencer culture, or I know how to make the hell out of content, and this industry needs to be destigmatized. I'm going to tell the story of all the amazing miracles that are happening in terms of people with epilepsy and multiple sclerosis and cancer and anxiety and pain. So I'm going to produce a series on YouTube that documents it and shows it in an amazing way. So I think don't always think like, I'm going to get into cannabis. Oh, that's so hard. You don't have to know everything there is to know about cannabis. You need to be excellent at the thing you're good at, and then excel in this industry, because it's an opportunity to take a part in a growing and flourishing industry.
Ericka?
Perfectly. So basically, she said, take all of your greatnesses, your skills, everything you know, figure out a way to apply it to cannabis, because, guys, there is so much room for growth and opportunity. It's a landfill. And
if you check out, sorry to interject, if you check out, because I've seen some people who ask about how to get into cannabis, so I asked the question. But if you check out some of our past Canna Chats, especially the Canna Chat conference that we had in April, we had a segment on implementing your skills in the cannabis industry, and a lot of those, my son in the background, a lot of those people who beautiful women that actually spoke on that. Were nurses and accountants, like you said, and just people from different backgrounds that actually implemented their skills into cannabis, and they're very successful at doing so. So check it out. It's on our live page as well. Tiana, do you want to wrap it up? I know these ladies got to get back to doing their thing.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like we can have this conversation for another couple hours. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your guidance. And most importantly, thank you for the work that you are doing for us in cannabis, because I know it's just a start, and the work that you're doing is going to create opportunities for millions of us. And we're here to fully support any programs you need help amplifying. Let us know. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you guys very much.
And
Bye.
thank
Bye.
everyone who joined. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for all our viewers. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.